I call to order this regular meeting of the Mount Pleasant City Commission this Monday, December 9th, 2019. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, has the roll been taken?
It has. All are present tonight.
Very good. First on our agenda, we have, we're introducing a new Parks and Ground staff, Cody Anderson and Lisa Myers. And we have Chris Bundy.
Good evening. I'm happy to introduce two new park staff members, wherever they're at, this evening to help us maintain the city parks and cemetery and public spaces. First, I'd like to introduce to you Cody Anderson as a new Parks and Grounds 1 staff member. He started full-time with us on November 10th. Cody might be a familiar face to some as he worked with the Parks Department as a seasonal for a number of seasons, and as our 9-month staff hire, Cody has already been, a great source for the department in helping keep a multitude of small engine equipment running in top shape. And Cody has also great customer service attitude as he's a seasonal. As a seasonal, he's already been of help to many residents and visitors, both in the cemetery and in the parks. Cody has also taken his individual initiative to complete his commercial driver's license requirements and successfully completed his road test this past month to receive his CDL. So please welcome Cody Anderson. Our most recent addition to the Parks Department is Lisa Myers, who joined the City Parks and Grounds staff on November 24th. Lisa is a Michigan State graduate with a bachelor's degree in horticulture and previously worked at Elm Creek Plant Nursery in Farwell. Lisa might also be familiar to some because she worked in the Parks Department because she loves plants and us so much during her days off from the nursery. So please join me in welcoming Lisa Myers to as our newest City Parks employee in the department. Lisa, she graduated from Michigan State, and our third staff member is a huge U of M fan. We're wondering what kind of conflict we're going to have in the department, but we'll probably see that through. So.
It's called the Great Divide, Chris.
There you go.
Thank you both for your service. Do we have any additions or deletions to the agenda tonight? Seeing none, I will open our first public input section. You can come to the podium, you state your name and your address, and you have 5 minutes to address the commission on any agenda items tonight. Seeing no one come forward, I will close the public comment. And we have our receipts of petitions and communications. Manager Ridley, would you like to start us off?
Yes, in this section of the agenda this evening, you have the report on pending items that you get each agenda. And then in addition to that, you have the monthly report on the police-related citizen complaints that have been received. And then secondly, you have the year-end report from Director Loria, sorry, Paul, Director Loria, which is updated with information for the second half of the year. You'll recall we did a mid-year report on our meetings with the community groups, and then this has been updated with the second half of the year. And the report also contains information about many of the items that we expect to continue into 2020 with the regular meeting with the groups and having their input into many of our issues. And so I think overall we feel the first year went fairly well, and I guess I would like to ask Paul if he has anything to add to that.
I'd just say that we made great progress. The year went by quick. It's definitely been worthwhile, and we got a bright future. So really enjoying it. Joyce Henricks and Maureen Ecke really keep me in my place, which is always good, and it's been worthwhile, so.
One item that I think we may want to look further into next year is, is looking into the possibility of maybe having a city commission representative on the Human Rights Committee. We've always had a city commission representative on the Mount Pleasant Area Diversity Group, and with our increased interaction with both of those groups, I thought that might be something for us to look into next year to see if that might be a possibility. The other things we have on the receipt of petitions and communications is the August minutes from the Economic Development Corporation and the November minutes from the Parks and Recreation Commission.
I'd just like to say thank you to Director Loria. You've given us updates throughout the year, and I've been to several events where you've been with Maureen and Joyce, and you can see the obvious, impact that that's had and the relationship that you've been building with both those groups, and I appreciate that. So thank you. Next is our consent items. Consent items are items on the agenda with an asterisk next to them. Are there any items that need to be removed from the consent agenda tonight? Seeing none, Manager Ridley, would you like to walk us through those?
Yes, we're recommending the following items. The first is approval of the minutes of both your regular meeting and your closed session of November 25th. We only have one bid for you this evening, and that's for what has been our annual tree trimming and removal bid. But what we did a little bit differently this year is when we sent it out, we asked for a 2-year price commitment, thinking that if a company had a 2-year commitment, that might impact some of the pricing. So we're recommending the bid of F&K Tree Services for the prices as outlined in the memo, and funds primarily in the major and local street funds are used to cover that tree trimming and removal costs, and it varies each year depending sometimes on our storms, unfortunately. The second item on the consent calendar is the amended resolution for the current year operating budget, and the memo in the packet from Assistant Finance Director Chris Saladin provides many details about the various changes that have occurred to all of the operating budgets since your last amendment in September. Generally, we tend to focus a little bit closer on the general fund. So what I would mention on that one is overall, we expect to end the year with an unassigned fund balance of just over $3.5 million, which represents approximately 26% of expenditures after all of the changes. And as you know, when we close the books, those numbers will change again, but that's our best estimate at this point in time. The next item is we're recommending a 1-year extension of the farming contract for some of the lands out at what used to be the Mount Pleasant Center. When we purchased the land from the state, we assumed a farming contract that the state had with Mr. Irvin for a number of years. And so we assumed that contract, and then in 2011, we bid it and added some additional areas to the farming. And so Mr. Irvin has been farming most of that land for quite a few number of years, but some pieces of it just since 2011. And we're recommending that you authorize the mayor and the clerk to sign just a 1-year extension to the existing contract at the current rental rates, because that will give us the ability next year to evaluate where we are, to know if it should be rebid or whether we want to change what areas are farmed at that point in time. And then the next meeting is looking ahead to 2020. We're recommending that you set your first meeting for next year, because the charter has you take that action instead of prescribing what date that should be. So to keep consistent with our second and fourth Monday schedule, which the public is fairly familiar with, we're recommending that the first meeting be set for Monday, January 13th at 7 p.m. And then lastly is approval of payrolls and warrants.
Commissioner Kulik.
Move to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Vice Mayor Gillis.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the consent calendar as presented, please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, the same. That is unanimous. Next on our agenda is receipt of a report on review of medical marijuana ordinances.
As you know, you passed the ordinance last year to allow medical marijuana facilities in the city of Mount Pleasant, and one provision of that ordinance required that we provide a report to you by the end of December 2019. So the memo that is in the packet serves as that report, and it provides not only the information that was outlined in the ordinance, but it also provides you the information on the number of applications that were received for facilities, the number that are in the process of being conditionally, or have been conditionally approved, and where they are in the process, and the one that has opened thus far. So as we did the review, that's one of the challenges we had, is we've only had one facility that has actually opened and has only been open for about 5 months. So it's a little difficult to determine how effective our ordinance is in some of the instances. So we're recommending that we provide another report for you at the end of 2020, which might be a little bit more comprehensive. One of the things we did look at, though, is whether any changes to the ordinance should be made. And in talking with the city attorney, we think there is one section that should be, you should consider for amendment, and that's the section that details what materials are needed upon initial application. Even though all of our applicants provided everything we expected except for one of them, the one who did not provide all the information ended up challenging that issue in court, and we ended up having to accept the application without that information. So to provide better clarity, we think we should amend the ordinance to make it more clear that the pre-qualification information that is given to Lara also needs to be given to the local unit. So we would suggest that we draft that amendment for you to consider after the first of the year, unless any of you have any objections to that. But other than that, there's no action that's required on your part this evening.
Do we have any discussion on this item? Commissioner Kulik?
I'm glad to see that it appears there's no dying desire to amend that ordinance when we don't really have any experience other than the one shop that's been open. I'm glad the administration is recommending to us that we hold off on anything big until we have another year under our belt and actually have some more facilities opened, and it seems like a good idea to change that ordinance on the recommendation of the attorney, just to clarify a little bit the material that's requested.
Seeing no other discussion, we'll move to item number 9, which is to consider a resolution approving the 2020 final operating budget and set the millage for 2020. Manager Ridley, would you like to introduce us?
Yes, as you know, you received the proposed budget at your first meeting in September, and you've had multiple work session discussions since then on it. In your agenda packet were some revised pages that would implement the changes that seem to be generally agreed to during those work session discussions. And those changes include some updated goal priorities for 2020, the implications of changing the enforcement for the 3-hour time limit parking in downtown, the approval of the full-time position in the Parks Department, the slight change to holiday lighting in the downtown trees so that it will no longer be year-round in the trees, and moving the downtown marketing funds to the assigned fund balance so that once we have a recommendation from the TIFA board, you can then look at allocating those. And then the addition of the spring leaf pickup that we spoke about at the last meeting. So the net effect of all of those changes on the general fund operating budget results in the general fund expenses exceeding revenues by just $19,260, which will be taken from the savings account and will still be above the fund balance policy goal. The resolution as drafted sets the millage rate at 16.25 mils, which is the same millage rate it's been at since, I believe, 2014. So we recommend you approve the resolution as presented.
Commissioner Kulik?
Move to approve the resolution for the 2020 operating budget as presented.
Commissioner Ling?
Second.
Commissioner Kulik?
Do we need to set the millage rate now, or is that something that we get another bite at it in the spring?
Our practice has been to set it now, but it's, the resolution says it's tentatively set.
Okay.
And you can revisit it in the spring, so you have the option to be able to do that.
Thank you.
Seeing no other, Vice Mayor Gillis?
I first would like to thank staff for all their hard work and due diligence on this budget, both Mary Ann and Chris. I appreciate all the work and the time, and also several work sessions that we tried to battle out this 2020 budget. I have been concerned since I started on the City Commission in 2016 about the LDFA, the Local Development Finance Authority, on the Smart Zone area. That is the land that is south of our football stadium. And they capture a percent of the taxable value, and we return it to them for their own use, the Finance Authority. From 2016, I have continuously wanted to see some return on investment in that tax increment Finance Authority. And to this date, I still have not seen any cost benefit for what we're giving the LDFA. For your own information, I'll run through this really quick. This year alone, the tax capture will be $115,000 that we are giving to the LDFA. These taxes can be used for several things. The expenses can be used for CMURC. It can be used for MMDC. It can be used for mowing, maintenance, and trash collection for the businesses in that smart zone. So as you and I pay for our trash collection, and everyone down Mission pays for their trash collection, the businesses and the corporations in the smart zone, we as taxpayers pay for their tax collection. But at a more ominous note is the amount of money that we have given them over the several years. I went back into some of my files and found what I was received in 2015 in November before I took the current office. So I at least got some of these numbers just to throw out at you so you can see where my concern is. 2001 tax captured. This is schools. This is Isabella County. This is the city of Mount Pleasant. This is our CRDL libraries taxes that are captured. Parks and Rec, Medical Care Facility, Commission on Aging, and our ICTC. 2001 was $28,850. 2002, there was no capture. 2003, it was $39,612. 2004, $82,727. 2005, $77,515. 2006, $107,236. 2007, $119,310. 2008, year 2008, $156,578. 2009, $169,501. 2010, $163,501, or 497, excuse me. 2011, $179,238. 2012, $196,540. 2013, $160,653. In year 2014, $160,888, with a total of those 15 years of our taxes going back into that smart zone were $1,642,144. This year, within this budget, we are giving that tax capture. This is tax money that would go into the general fund. Well, some of it would go in the general fund. The other ones would be dispersed to the taxing units that I just mentioned before. And we are giving the smart zone $115,500. This is to increase the taxable value in that smart zone on the vacant parcels. Well, anyone that has lived in Mount Pleasant knows year after year, and since 2016, when I began on the City Commission, there has been no development, no shovel-ready corporations, developments, businesses that have gone into the smart zone. I feel this is not a good use of our taxpayer dollars. I do not see any cost benefit for this, so I will be voting no on this year's budget, next year's budget, excuse me.
Commissioner Kulik?
Just want to speak in favor of the LDFAs and the Tifa districts. If we don't continue to invest, nothing will ever get done there. The economy's been terrible for the last 8 or 10 years. I'm not surprised that nothing new has been built there. We did have a major expansion at the CME building there. Part of that's because of the continual groundwork that's being laid by the MMDC and the folks at the Smart Zone. Economic development is not something that you wave a magic wand and it happens right now. It takes years and years of building trust, building infrastructure, building contacts to have success. And I think if we were to discontinue that, I think we'd be cutting off our nose to spite our face.
Seeing no other discussion, all those in favor of approving the 2020 budget and the millage rate, please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And those opposed, the same.
Nay.
Aye.
So that passes 5-2 with Gillis and Tolis in opposition. Okay. Next on our agenda is item number 11, which is to consider approval of agreement with Nottawa Township for processing wastewater. Manager Ridley, would you like to give us some background?
Yes, in 2018, the City Commission approved a resolution indicating support to develop an intergovernmental agreement with Nottawa Township so that the city could process wastewater that originates in Nottawa Township. As you know, the township was required by Eagle to implement a sanitary sewer system and determined that their preference was to implement the collection system within their jurisdiction and then have the waste processed by the city plant since we have excess capacity. The reason it makes sense for the city to do this is, the primary reason is it helps to protect the Chippewa River. Secondly, as I indicated, we have excess capacity at our plant, and so this would, processing additional waste would allow us to spread some of those fixed costs over more of the flow. And overall, sharing infrastructure is just good for all the taxpayers in our region instead of having redundant infrastructure, and it's always good to be a good neighbor to a township. So the agreement that's included in your packet for consideration this evening was developed by the city staff, the township engineers, and legal counsel for both the city and the township. And in summary, it provides the following overall information. It indicates that the township is responsible for all of the construction and construction costs, as well as the maintenance of all of the collection system and the pipes for getting the waste to the city wastewater plant. It makes sure that we keep that allowable capacity available for the township. It sets the maximum residential equivalent units that they can hook up, how many gallons per REU, and how those are adjusted over time, and what the peak flow is that can go into the plant. The term of the contract is for 40 years, and it identifies all of the construction standards that must be followed for that hookup. And then, most importantly, it sets the billing rate and identifies that it will be adjusted each year by the same percentage as our city rates are adjusted. And it makes it clear that the township is responsible for the maintenance and its own billing. Although we have had some discussions with the townships about whether they may want to contract with us for that maintenance and billing, we have made no commitments to do that at this time. So this contract before you this evening is merely for the processing of the wastewater that is sent to our plant. And so we recommend that you authorize the mayor and the clerk to sign it. The Nottawa Township Board did approve it at their meeting last week.
Commissioner Kulik.
Move to authorize the mayor and city clerk to sign the sanitary sewer service contract with Nottawa Township as presented.
Commissioner Perschbacher.
I second.
Discussion? Commissioner Kulik.
The other, in addition to all the things that Nancy brought up as reasons to do this, we also looked at build out of the city. And even if we were to totally build out the area where the regional center was and the development that's being proposed down in the smart zone, we would still have excess capacity. And if we can help spread that cost to others, it helps the ratepayers in the city of Mount Pleasant.
Vice Mayor Gillis.
Just want to make clear that this is to no cost to the city. Is that correct, Manager Ridley?
They're paying all of the construction costs, yes.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ling.
I'd just like to thank the city for the work that they've done to set this up. This has been an ongoing issue, starting with information that we learned about the pollution of the Chippewa River. A lot of work done by the Saginaw Chippewa tribe in order to discover the cause of it. A lot of work on the part of Nottawa Township to try to address it in cooperation sometimes with the county. I think it's the kind of agreement that citizens are looking for, one that addresses a problem that affects the whole area and that involves cooperation between the city and the township. That I've heard that desire for more cooperation between the various local levels of government since I've been involved in government almost 50 years ago. This is a great example of that cooperation, so thank you for the work on it.
Commissioner Kulik.
I guess a shout out to Representative Hauk for getting the seed money that helped grant that helped Nottawa Township be able to do this project in an economical manner.
All those in favor of approving the contract with Nottawa Township, please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And those opposed, the same. That is unanimous. Next on our agenda is item number 12, which is to consider amended memorandum of agreement for the Mount Pleasant Indian Industrial Boarding School / Mount Pleasant Center property. Manager Ridley, would you like to start us off?
Tagging off on Commissioner Ling's comment about working cooperatively with our neighbors, that's what this amended agreement is about. Last year, both the City Commission and the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribal Council approved and then signed a memorandum of agreement regarding the land that was formerly used as the Industrial Indian Boarding School and the Mount Pleasant Center. The agreement outlines the commitment by the city to do some initial archaeological work before developing some portions of the land, and it also outlines a process for both the city and the tribe to be made aware of and offered an opportunity to comment on any potential development on the land owned by each of the entities, and it outlines timelines for all the reviews and responses. The original agreement that was signed last year included a provision to ask the State Historic Preservation Office or the state archaeologist to review the agreement and be given the opportunity to make any suggestions, because the state reserved the antiquity rights when those lands were transferred to both the city and the tribe. Due to staff turnover at the SHPO and state archaeologist, it took us a while to get their final comments, but finally in November we did hear from them with some suggested changes. And so Eric Rodriguez and I have reviewed and implemented the ones that make it more clear and provide more clarity in what work is being done, and also the ones that outline where the state has a role in the review process. So in your packet this evening is a red line strikeout version of the agreement that was approved last year with just the few changes that we are recommending be implemented based on that SHPO review. The Tribal Council has approved the amended agreement already, and we're recommending tonight that you approve it and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign it. And at that point in time, it will be a final agreement, and we can move forward with implementation.
Commissioner Kulik.
Move to authorize the mayor or city clerk to sign the amended memorandum of agreement with the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe for the former Mount Pleasant Center property as presented.
Commissioner Ling.
Second.
Commissioner Kulik.
I'd like to thank the state for being excessively nitpicky for the changes that they made to the document. I'm not sure, in my humble opinion, that it made it any more clarified than it was before, but hey, when they have the stick, I guess we have to obey.
Commissioner Tolis.
I will not be supporting this tonight. I was not involved in the original drawing of this document. I have many concerns. Here we are 9 years later with over $6 million in this property. We still don't have the title problems cured on this property. And I'm looking at this. And I'm looking at item M, the city acquired the city property for development that will provide additional employment in the areas and enhance the city's property tax base. Well, I don't think that's being done. Also, section 4, city property development. I've read through this and I'm just wondering who owns this property. Does the city of Mount Pleasant own it or does the tribe own it? If you look under the City Development Property, Section 4A and B, the city shall inform the tribe within 30 days when the city receives any bona fide written proposal or plan for development of any portion of the city property. Also, there's all kind of restrictions here in Section A of it where you can't stockpile raw materials, outdoor storage, cannot use large quantities of water for production. So that means the cheese plant that was once looking here to come into Mount Pleasant that went into St. John's, it uses a lot of water for their production. You can't have production. Are we entering into a deed restricted agreement? Also, I see on the signatory page here, the state of Michigan has put input into this, but they're not on the signatory page. It's basically the city of Mount Pleasant and the tribe. Also, this agreement goes for a 15-year period. I don't know why we'd have to go for 15 years. There's many problems, and I've been accused of not being a problem solver on this commission, but I gave you how you can solve this problem, and it'll have to be a reverse act of Congress to get this property back into the city's hand, which this went from the federal government to the state of Michigan under the 1934 Comstock Act that was implemented by Congress. Like I said, it's been 9 years, and we just keep kicking the can down the road. I mean, there's nothing resolved. And entering into another agreement when we haven't even got the title situated here, I don't think is a good idea.
Commissioner Ling.
I understand some of the concerns that have been raised by Commissioner Tolis, and I think he has brought some things to our attention that we needed to take a look at. But I would say that overall, I'm very pleased to see that we are entering into this agreement. It has been a long time coming. There are a lot of issues involved with the purchase of the property. There were a lot of issues back at the time that we made the decision to purchase it. We spent over a year looking at the issue, and there were a lot of questions that were raised. In the end, it was a unanimous vote to purchase the property. All of us, I think, at the time we voted on it, knew we were not looking at a piece of property that was going to be developed in 5 or 10 years. All of us knew as we went into it, we were looking at a long-term future. I think it's been slow. There's no two ways about that. And there have been issues that have come up that had not been anticipated. But throughout it, we have tried to work in a cooperative way with the Saginaw Chippewa tribe. It's a good question to ask who owns the property. It is actually jointly owned, although obviously the city owns the largest part of it. A few acres are owned by the tribe because of the historical significance of the buildings that were still left on that property. But the whole property is of historical significance. It all at one time was part of the boarding school. And so we have tried from the beginning, including meetings with the tribe before we made the decision to purchase, that we wanted to work in a cooperative way so that in the end, we would have a project that we all felt good about. And I think that this agreement is one step in that direction. And when I go by the property, it's easy to go to by the property, see problems, and there are. when I go by the property, I see a beautiful piece of property that I think in the long run is going to be a real asset to the community. And I am very proud of the fact that as we've done it, both the tribe and the city and the university have been recognized for the sensitive way in which they've gone forward with it. So I am going to enthusiastically vote for this agreement.
I'd like to make a couple comments. I share the concern of Commissioner Tolis that that we want to see development on this land, and that in the end, you know, the city has poured $6 million in investment in really trying to make it so that we can develop it. And I think that this agreement with our community partner, Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe, gets us one step closer to that. There are some questions about the title, and we're working with the state of Michigan currently to really resolve those. But without this agreement, nothing will happen on that land. And this puts us closer to that, and I think it really exemplifies the relationship that we have with our community partners, our neighbors, and I think it's a good gesture that we're making efforts to preserve the history that is there, and that in the long run that this land can be developed and also enjoyed by everyone, and not be a source of pain and controversy down the road. So I will be supporting the agreement. Seeing no other further discussion, all those in favor of approving the amended memorandum of agreement, please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And those opposed, the same.
Aye.
So that passes 6-1 with Tolis in opposition. Next on our agenda is item number 14, which is a report on the city manager evaluation and to consider a wage adjustment. Okay. So I'll be giving a little brief synopsis of our city manager evaluation. In a manager-city council form of government, the city manager is the top administrative official of the city. The responsibility of oversight of the city manager falls to the city commission, and every year to fulfill the highest duty, we conduct a performance review. The city commission performs a review that is heavily characterized by guidelines set forth by the International City Managers Association, a professional organization that seeks to strengthen local units of government and improve the lives of residents everywhere. In this past year, the city manager has had significant progress towards the goals set forth by the commission and tackling issues that came about that were not apparent at the onset of the year. Implementation of medical marijuana ordinance and researching recreational marijuana regulations that resulted in a completed and passed ordinance. Significant research on residential snow removal and the completion of a comprehensive report that led to a new service that will serve our residential neighborhoods to maintain a walkable city the whole year round. Hiring 12 new employees and managing our workforce demands, with nearly a third of our employees nearing retirement eligibility. The manager also oversaw and completed the work necessary that spanned several years for Mount Pleasant to be designated a redevelopment-ready city, which was first in our region and among the first in our state. The manager also maintains relationships with our community partners, including the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe, Central Michigan University, Isabella County, and Union Township, and others. Nancy has given several presentations to various groups, such as the Chamber of Commerce, the Leadership Institute, CMU students, and as well others. The commission sees Nancy as playing a vital role in the organization and appreciates the work done by her and staff. As a result, Mount Pleasant continues to meet its objectives and maintain a healthy fund balance. She provides expertise on policy and budget concerns. It is vital to the success of the city that the city manager upholds the high caliber of work and expectations that Nancy Ridley has set. As an organization, we will continue to work to improve the lives of our citizens and provide a great place to work for our staff. As a commission, we must be cognizant to honor the hard work and respect the expertise, everyone puts forward and provide clear goals to the city manager and staff. On behalf of the commission, I would like to thank our city manager and all of our staff for another great year. With that, I would like to open discussion on a wage adjustment for our city manager. Commissioner Kulik.
I think we've had another great year, echoing all the things that you mentioned. I'd like to propose that we do a 2% wage increase. I realize that barely keeps up with, probably just a little bit ahead of inflation, and that wage increase be to her base salary and not in the form of a bonus. If we continue, as the commission unfortunately has been doing, to give the managers bonuses and not add to their base salary, when the city manager leaves and all of a sudden we realize it's going to cost us $50,000 more to hire a new city manager than the one that we had because we gave bonuses and we didn't add to the base salary. I think it's a disservice to the manager to do bonuses rather than add it to the base salary. So I would move that we do a 2% wage increase to the manager.
I'll second the motion, and I would begin this conversation. The last 5 years, the city manager has received. She started off with a base salary of $120,000 and received one-time bonuses for 3 of those years, and then last year a 2% wage increase to the base salary. And I agree with Commissioner Kulik that a 2% wage increase to the base salary is more reflective of the needs, I think, of the position, and it really prepares ourselves for the future when Nancy gets tired of the rest of us and decides to retire. So I agree, and I will obviously support the motion set forth by Commissioner Kulik. Vice Mayor Gillis.
Well, this takes me by surprise. Will and I discussed this quite at length a couple days ago, and we had decided on a bonus, and we were supposed to reach out to the other commissioners to let them know the agreement that we had both reached at that time. I guess 48 hours makes a lot of difference because at that time we had agreed on a bonus, Will, and so this is the first I've heard of it, as usual. Things that happen outside of the city commission realm by individual commissioners that decide on something and then spring it on the rest of us. So this is a perfect example of those things that happen behind closed doors and without the knowledge of all of us. I thought we had came to an agreement of a bonus. So I will not be supporting this evening for that very reason, that what we had agreed upon, and I thought we were reaching out. Will was given the job of contacting the commissioners and letting them know, but obviously there was other discussions, and I wasn't privy to any changes in what we were going to be doing this evening, which isn't uncommon with this city commission, but that would be the only reason that I am voting no.
I'd like to retort. I did reach out, and I think there was support for the recommendation that we had discussed. But I think Commissioner Kulik felt the way that I had felt, that a 2% increase is more appropriate, and so that is the reason I'm supporting his motion tonight.
Would have been convenient if you talked to the vice mayor about that. Since you changed your mind, could have just called up the phone, right?
Commissioner Kulik.
The mayor and I didn't speak until late this afternoon. It was probably 3, 4 o'clock, and I'm sorry if that's, he doesn't have you on speed dial, I'm just sorry.
Got a lot of influence, Kulik, Commissioner Kulik.
Commissioner Toles.
I was also called at after 4 o'clock by the mayor and told me the consensus was that it was going to be a $2,200 increase or something in that ballpark. I will not be supporting this either for that reason. That the consensus was it was supposed to be $2,200. Now we're bumping it. It was supposed to be a bonus. Now it's a salary increase, and for that reason, I will not be supporting this.
Commissioner Kulik.
I hate to say, but I don't think two commissioners meeting and discussing, even if they are the mayor and vice mayor, constitutes a consensus of the board.
Commissioner Ling.
Obviously, we've got some area of disagreement here. I would say this is always a little bit difficult to handle. I can understand the feelings of all of the commissioners, including the vice mayor, because I've been in the position, having been vice mayor and mayor a number of times. I know we get to this point, and it's between a work session and a regular meeting. It's generally kind of a decision made right before the meeting by the mayor and vice mayor. There are arguments on both sides of a bonus versus a 2% increase. The bottom line here is that the 2% increase and the $2,200 bonus are basically the same figure, very similar figures. And I feel uncomfortable, a little uncomfortable in the position of trying to decide between the two. I guess in the end I'm going to have to go with what I think is the rationale for when do you do a 2% and when do you do a bonus. There are good arguments on both sides of that, and we've used both arguments in the past. At this point, generally speaking, my assumption is that the years that we do a bonus, it's usually because there's been some unusual event, like the flood, for example, that in the same way that other of the senior level employees are sometimes awarded bonuses because of something unusual that has happened out of the ordinary, and therefore a bonus is given. Sometimes it's been to keep the salary still competitive with other city managers. In general, I think it's best to adjust it for cost of living. So while I find this a difficult decision, I've got to go with what I think is probably the best thing to do at this point, and I think doing the cost of living is probably the best thing to do.
Commissioner Lalone.
I just learned about this also this afternoon, so I came in with the idea that we'd be giving a bonus, but you do make a good point about raising base salary to meet market demands of the position. If Nancy was working in a corporate entity, she'd be getting both things, but we have to choose between one or the other. And I understand, I can see the argument to be, I think it makes more sense to raise the base salary as well, just because I think it makes more sense to stay within market value of the position.
Vice Mayor Gillis.
One last comment. This is my 4th year on the city commission. In every previous year, the vice mayor and the mayor got together and decided the wage increase for the city manager. For the last 4 years, the rest of the city commission found out or was told what they had decided on, and there was always, we just went along with their recommendation until this year. I find it ironic this year when what I thought was a consensus between myself and Will has now turned into this mayhem. And it's an unfortunate, but like I said previously, this is somewhat what goes behind the scenes on the city commission, where you kind of have your legs taken out from under you, and you're the last one to know. So when you talk about decisiveness and civility within the city commission, you have no idea what goes on behind the dais or behind these city commissioners. You have no idea the bargainings and the certain situations that come about where you do something for me and I'll do something for you, or just like this evening where I'm finding out for the first time that this is even had a different outcome, where the city commissioners were given a call and told one thing, but a commissioner suggests something else, and we're all put into a kind of a lockstep. So it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate the community is not aware of all the going-ons behind the scenes. I just feel very blindsided once again, and I will not be supporting this.
Commissioner LaLonde.
I truly don't see the issue here because this happens almost every meeting where somebody likes to spring something on the agenda at the last minute and then we're all supposed to decide on it. When that happens, I take that new information and then I form an opinion based on that new information. I came in here thinking I would approve a bonus, but Tony brought up a new thing that I think makes sense. And I feel like as a thinking person, that's part of our job to adjust our opinion based off of new information. So I really take offense to the idea that I'm somehow doing backseat dealings over here. That's not true. And I am extremely offended by that. And I just don't understand the issue here.
Commissioner Toles.
Call the question.
Question has been called. All those in favor of a 2% base salary wage adjustment, please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And those opposed, the same.
Aye.
Okay. So that passes 5-2. Item number 16 is to consider a motion to cancel the city commission scheduled for December 16th, 2019. Commissioner Kulik.
Move to cancel the meeting of the Mount Pleasant City Commission scheduled for December 16th, 2019.
Commissioner LaLonde.
Isn't it supposed to be the 23rd?
No, when we set the original schedule, we
okay.
accommodated for the holiday.
Second. Just wanted to double check.
Seeing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion, please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And those opposed, the same. That is unanimous. Item number 17 is to consider a motion to authorize Finance Director Mary Ann Cornexel to approve the issuance of payrolls and warrants from December 10th, 2019 through January 10th, 2020. Commissioner Kulik.
Move to authorize the Finance Director, Mary Ann Cornaxel, to approve the issuance of payrolls and warrants for the December 10th, 2019 through January 10th, 2020.
Commissioner Perschbacher.
Second.
Commissioner Kulik.
Just so people out in TV land know, we the commissioners still get copies of the check register that is prepared for those payroll periods, so it's not like Mary Ann's writing checks in secret out there.
All those in favor, please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, the same. That is unanimous. Next on our agenda is announcements of city-related issues and new business. Manager Ridley, would you like to start us off?
I have a couple things for you this evening, please. The first is you'll notice around the room we have 3 banners set up this evening, and these are all related to the census, which is coming up in 2020. And so we thought it was an important topic for our city, our county, and our state, obviously. And this is one of the things we will be using throughout the community to help show the importance of it. The ones before you this evening have to do with our city, or have to do with focus on community, small business, and public safety. And we have 6 others that we have available too that focus on neighborhoods, parks, public works, water, and you as an individual, and they're all tailored to the city of Mount Pleasant. So you'll be seeing these out and about over the next few months, so I thought you'd be interested in that. The second item I'd like to mention is our Public Works Director, John Zhang, is retiring from the city, and so since this is the last meeting that John will be attending with us, I wanted to publicly thank him for his service to the city and its residents over the 6+ years that John has been with us. John has a true commitment to public works. and the infrastructure that's needed in our city every day for the things that we take for granted. He has served the city well and has helped implement a number of improvements we will see the results of for a number of years. So I wanted to publicly thank him for his dedicated service. Thank you, John. And then my last item is I just wanted to briefly say thank you for the comments on my evaluation. Luckily, I'm the type of person who's motivated by positive feedback and not by compensation decisions. So I appreciate the first part of it where you highlighted the accomplishments that the staff did this year. And even though I get the credit for those, they're the ones who do all the hard work, and that really does motivate them. So thank you for recognizing those accomplishments.
Commissioner Perschbacher.
I'd like to announce that this past weekend with the Christmas celebration downtown, we also had Annie Jr. that ran Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at the Broadway Theater. It runs again this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, Friday at 7, Saturday at 7, and Sunday at 2. The kids are doing a great job. It's literally like a play on Broadway. And you guys should come out and see it. It's $10 a ticket, and it's the best way to get these kids involved in doing something outside of themselves.
Commissioner Kulik.
This is my last meeting, and I got a little comments here. As I sit here for my last meeting as a city commissioner, I'd like to thank all the citizens who trusted me to fairly represent their interests for the past 6 years. I hope I haven't let you down. I never planned on being a city commissioner for the rest of my life. 6 years seemed about right to me. I always believed that in a city of 26,000 residents, that the loud voice of a few special interest individuals did not represent the opinions of the vast majority of citizens sitting at home just trying to make tomorrow better than today. The commission will have many important issues to deal with in 2020 and beyond. Some of these include obtaining an accurate complete count for the 2020 census, adoption of the new master plan, beginning of the sale of the regional center property, a community pool, the future of the airport, and maintaining the quality of day-to-day life of the citizens have come to expect. Please feel free to reach out and ask me to help anytime you feel that I may be of help to the city. The commission will need to choose a mayor next year to help lead the commission. This is an important decision and should not be taken lightly. The mayor helps to set the tone for the commission's actions. The mayor should be a commissioner who the other commissioners trust, is fair, and can continue ongoing relationships with community partners. There's nothing in the charter that limits a mayor to one term. I've witnessed a great deal of growth and commitment in the current mayor. I would suggest my fellow commissioners and the incoming commissioners consider retaining him for another year. The city is blessed to have Nancy Ridley as our city manager. Her calm and professional demeanor serves the city and the commissioners well. Avoid the temptations to start micromanaging her and her staff. The city is also blessed to have some of the hardest working, creative, and caring staff I have ever had the privilege of working with. When you compare the number of city employees to comparable cities, you will find that Mount Pleasant does more with fewer employees than other cities in the state. Please continue to respect their recommendations and treat them fairly with compensation, benefits, and the tools necessary to perform their jobs.
Commissioner Ling.
Since I'm the other commissioner that will be leaving at the end of this year, it seems like an appropriate time to also add a couple comments, and I certainly appreciate the comments from Commissioner Kulik, and these kind of dovetail together, so we didn't plan it, but since it is my last meeting, I would like to say what an honor it has been to represent the city of Mount Pleasant. And I'd also like to take a few minutes for some thank yous for the people and groups who have been very helpful as I've tried to perform this role as the city commissioner. First thing I'd like to do is to thank my fellow commissioners. During the time that I've been on here, I have worked with 20 different people. And I can honestly say I have enjoyed working with all 20 of them. I have respected them. I have learned from them. Sometimes I have disagreed with them. Sometimes I have vehemently disagreed with them. But I have never doubted that whatever way they voted, they were voting in what they really believed was in the best interest of the city. And so it's been a pleasure to work with them. I'd also, as Tony said, like to say, thank the staff. We have a wonderful staff working for the city of Mount Pleasant, some extremely talented and dedicated people. I think they sometimes get a little frustrated with the commission when we don't always take their advice, but we certainly respect their advice, and I think we are very fortunate to have them as our staff. I'd like to thank the other local governments. As I said earlier, one of the things I think we really tried to do is to increase intergovernmental cooperation, and I think we have at this point a great relationship with many of the surrounding governments, Union Township, the county, which was extremely helpful to the city during the flood a couple of years ago, the university, which I think has been continuously increasing their efforts to have cooperation between the city and the university, and the students who are part of the university and also a very important part of the city and make a big difference in the city. And the Saginaw Chippewa tribe. The agreement that we reached today, the memorandum of agreement, is just one way in which I think we've really developed a strong relationship with the tribe. The press, who I think does a great job of trying to keep the public informed. My family and friends, who I'm sure are very sick of hearing about the city every time we get together, and will be glad to change the subject, but who have been very helpful. And finally, I'd like to thank the citizens of Mount Pleasant. The recent movie about Fred Rogers has meant that he's been in the news a lot lately, and I've heard a quote twice now that he was fond of telling people that when he was a child and would be afraid, that his mother would tell him, when the situation is scary and when you're not sure what's going to happen, look for the helpers, because they're the ones that are problem solvers. This is a community with a lot of helpers. Sometimes they're in groups, service organizations, civics groups, nonprofit organizations. Sometimes it's just an individual with an idea that makes a difference. And as I was thinking about the last 12 years, I'd like to just very briefly mention four, one from my first year and a couple from the last year. First year I was here, Hud Keenan, a former mayor, actually, of the city from many years ago, came to a meeting to tell us that a bridge that we were about to knock down, the Oak Street Bridge, was actually a pretty historic bridge, and he thought maybe the city should consider restoring it. Many months later, after a lot of research and work by some individuals and by people on the staff, it was determined that, in fact, it was an historic bridge and worth saving. And that historic bridge has now become kind of a symbol of the city. And that was thanks to the thoughtfulness of one individual coming forward. Halfway through my term, in 2013, Keith Veit came forward with an idea for another item that has become symbolic, and that's the bridge over High Street, the railroad crossing. I think a lot of people thought that he was crazy, thinking that somehow we could raise the money to be able to paint that bridge in a way that would really become a symbol of the city. But he raised the money, he worked with the railroad, he worked with the city, and that also has become symbolic. And then during the last year, we had a high school student, Taylor Adema, who had an idea for a pavilion in Island Park. Work with the Parks and Recreation Department, work with a lot of people in the city, raise an awful lot of money, and we now have a pavilion. And finally, last week, we recognized Kay Bauk, who devoted 46 years to working with softball, and we named the stadium, the baseball park, softball park in Island Park for her. I wanted to say something then, but I was so emotional after all of the comments that were made, I couldn't really say anything, and as you can see, I'm a little emotional tonight. It's those kinds of people. That is what makes Mount Pleasant a special place, and I appreciate the honor of having been able to watch it from this seat. Thank you.
Commissioner Doles.
One quick comment here. I was disappointed to hear today that, from a planning commission member, that they will not move forward on correcting any of the problems on the city ordinance. And it was discussed, since only one person is complaining, and that was stated as Mr. Olivieri, that this was not going to go forward. And I find that hard to kind of believe that one person is in complaining when I've received, and every commissioner here has received, a letter from the Home Builders Association. Mr. Tennyson was here, Kalinitsky Builders, Joe Olivieri, and I'm pretty sure there was over 10 or 12 signatures on the Home Builders Association. I kind of hate bringing up these problems, but I figure it's my fiduciary duty to bring these problems up. And I've been accused of not being a problem solver, not being a team player, which I wasn't informed that once I got on the city commission, this is a team sport. I came here, and I think I do a little bit of respect. I gave 19 years to this community, 8 years on the zoning board, 4 years chairing it, 4 as a regular member on there, 11 years to the East DDA. I don't have to be here. I'm trying to get here to cure some problems. I started on this regional center 9 years ago, stood at that podium when the city said, we're going to clean that entire compound for $1.6 million, and I says, you're totally wrong. It's going to be north of $6 million. Where are we at today, 9 years later? North of $6 million. I don't know what to do. I'm just trying to get this announcement out to the builders, because many have talked to me about this, and I just don't know what I can do. You know, the problems are still there. It's 2 years later, and it looks like nothing's going to be done. Thank you.
Commissioner Lalone.
I'd like to thank Commissioner Kulik and Commissioner Ling for their service to the City Commission. I'm going to miss them quite a bit. They had a lot of knowledge and background and insight that I thought was that's been very useful to me during my time on the commission, and I will miss their presence here at the meetings.
Sorry.
Vice Mayor Gillis.
One question for the city manager. Mid-Michigan Capital was going to close by the end of the year and pay us the whopping $65,000 for parcel B. Are we going to be getting that before the end of the year, or?
Yes, we're still working toward that. We're working on some of the final documents that are needed before closing, and every anticipation is that closing will happen before the end of the year.
Thank you. I also want to express my sympathy for Don Shido. He, a community member, a alumni from Central Michigan. Thus, that's why I'm wearing the sweatshirt in honor of him. He was a graduate and then took up stake here in Mount Pleasant and raised a family, which we are always trying to find different ways to encourage our Central students to stay here within our community. He worked at WNEM and WCEN, very large personality, and then went to broadcasting for the CMU Chippewas football players and games and basketball. It was a wonderful service today up at Warner Auditorium for him. And I would like to ask the City Commission if they would entertain a moment of silence for a community member that gave so much and stayed within our reach. Thank you, fellow commissioners. Thank you, community members here. Wish their family during this holidays, your prayers and your wishes. Thank you.
Seeing no other announcements, I have a little bit of some words for Kathy and Tony. Commissioner Ling first became a public office holder on August 30th, 1976, as an Isabella County Board of Commissioner and served through December 31st, 1980. Not having enough punishment, she served again from 1983 to the end of 1984. During her time, she was the chairperson in 1983 and the vice chair in 1984. In her time in the Mount Pleasant community, Kathy Ling was a high school government teacher, an active member of the League of Women Voters. She has also found time to be a planning commission member in 1976, serve on the Board of Review through 1981 and 1982. And after retirement, Kathy was elected to the City Commission in 2008 and also became heavily involved in the Michigan Municipal League, attending conferences and conventions for over 10 years. She served as our vice mayor in 2012 and mayor in 2013, 2016, and 2017. Commissioner Kulik served as our city planner from February 8th, 1988 to June 2nd, 2008. Following his retirement, Tony devoted more to the city by serving on the Zoning Board of Appeals from February 2009 to November 2013, the Building, Fire, and Sanitary Sewer Board from 2009 to 2013, and the Historic District Commission from 2012 through 2013. With his expertise and passion, Tony was elected to the City Commission in 2014. Both Tony and Kathy have immense passion, knowledge, and experience of the city and our greater community. They are both respected leaders who exhibit compassion, respect, and wisdom in their lives and decisions as commissioners. Looking forward to the year ahead, the next City Commission has giant shoes to fill, but rest assured that the hard work Tony and Kathy have helped achieve has put the city on solid ground to meet the challenges of tomorrow. I uniquely have shared a ballot and a debate stage with both Tony and Kathy, and eventually we joined at the dais that we are at today. I've been impressed by the knowledge and the experience they bring to their decisions, and also the respect that they offer to each other and others, even in disagreement. I think I can speak on behalf of the commission and the city as a whole. Thank you for your service. You will be missed, and keep your phones on just in case. And for Commissioner Ling, we have a gift to you.
Can we get a photo op of that?
For Commissioner Kulik. Seeing no, Commissioner Kulik.
I'd like to thank Steve Swart. He's hiding back there in the camera room. As a going-away present, he gave me a copy of his newest book, The Turn of the Century in Panorama, Mount Pleasant, Michigan. Very cool picture book. And if anybody out there in TV land wants one for Christmas gifts for people, they'd make a wonderful stocking stuffer. Contact Steve.
Seeing no other announcements, I will open our last public comment section. For the public, you can come to the podium, state your name and your address, and you have 5 minutes to address the commission. Seeing no one come forward, I will close the public comment section. and entertain a motion to adjourn. Commissioner Kulik,
So moved.
Commissioner Ling,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? I believe we're adjourned.